The Boston Strangler's signature knot was chilling not for its complexity, but for its simplicity. A child's bow, the kind used to tie shoes. It was a knot everyone knew, something learned in childhood, practiced daily, and never given a second thought. Yet, in the hands of the Strangler, this innocent gesture was transformed into a symbol of pure menace. The very ordinariness of the knot made it all the more disturbing, as if evil had crept in through the back door of everyday life. This ordinary bow, used to secure a silk stocking or cord around a victim's neck, became a symbol of terror in Boston. Each time police arrived at a scene, the sight of that familiar knot sent a chill through even the most seasoned detectives. It was as if the killer was mocking the city, daring anyone to see past the surface and recognize the horror lurking beneath. The killer's choice of a bow, sometimes single, sometimes double, and using various materials, confounded investigators searching for a clear pattern. There was no complex sailor's knot or intricate binding, just a bow, tied with the casual ease of someone wrapping a present or tying an apron. The randomness of the materials only deepened the mystery, making it nearly impossible to predict or profile the killer's next move. The act was consistent. A decorative knot at the scene of brutality, a taunt to police and public alike. It was as if the Strangler wanted to leave a calling card, a twisted signature that would haunt the memories of all who saw it. The bow became a silent message, a reminder that the killer was always one step ahead. The psychological impact was profound. A bow, usually a symbol of innocence or gift-giving, twisted into a mark of death. What once represented care and celebration was now a harbinger of fear. The city's sense of safety unraveled as people realized that even the most harmless objects could be turned against them. It was a grotesque parody of domesticity, turning everyday items into instruments of horror. The killer's use of household objects blurred the line between the familiar and the terrifying, making people question the safety of their own homes. The bow was no longer just a knot, it was a warning. In the early 1960s, forensic science was limited. Police looked for fingerprints and witnesses, not psychological signatures. The tools available to investigators were basic, and the idea of profiling a killer's mind was still in its infancy. Detectives were forced to rely on intuition and experience, often feeling outmatched by the Strangler's cunning. The bow-tied ligature forced investigators to consider the killer's mind, not just the physical evidence. For the first time, police began to wonder about motive, psychology, and the meaning behind the killer's choices. The knot was more than a clue. It was a window into the darkness of a disturbed mind. This simple knot became a puzzle, pushing police into the uncharted territory of criminal profiling. The search for answers led to new investigative techniques as detectives tried to piece together the Strangler's identity from the psychological breadcrumbs he left behind. The Strangler's bow was more than a clue. It was a message, and it haunted Boston. Night after night, the city held its breath, waiting for news, dreading the next attack. The bow became a symbol of the fear that gripped every neighborhood. It left a scar on the city's psyche, a reminder that evil can hide behind the most mundane details. Even after the headlines faded, the memory of the bow lingered, a ghostly presence in the collective memory of Boston. The search for meaning in that knot would drive the investigation for years as detectives and citizens alike struggled to understand how something so simple could become so sinister. Between 1962 and 1964, Boston was gripped by a chilling fear that crept into every corner of the city. What began as isolated incidents soon spiraled into a wave of terror that would haunt Boston for years to come. A series of brutal murders targeted women who were alone in their homes, shattering the sense of safety that once defined Boston's neighborhoods. The city's streets, once bustling and lively, became eerily quiet after dark. The victims ranged from teenagers to the elderly, spanning all backgrounds and walks of life. There was no clear connection between them, which only heightened the city's anxiety and confusion. No one felt safe. Every woman, regardless of age or status, was a potential target. The killer gained entry without force, suggesting a disturbing level of charm or deception. It was as if anyone could be the Strangler, a neighbor, a delivery man, or even a trusted acquaintance. The press quickly dubbed him the Boston Strangler, and the name alone sent shockwaves through the community. Sensational headlines fueled panic and paranoia as the story dominated front pages and nightly news. Women fortified their homes, bought watchdogs and took self-defense classes. They double-checked locks, peered nervously through curtains, and lived in constant fear, wondering if they might be next. The randomness of the attacks made every woman feel like a potential target. Even the most mundane routines, walking home, answering the door, became acts of courage. Investigators divided the crimes into groups, noting differences in victim age and method, which only deepened the mystery. The lack of a clear pattern left detectives frustrated and the public even more unsettled. Robbery wasn't the motive. Valuables were left untouched, as if the killer's only goal was to instill terror and exert dominance. The killer sought power and control, leaving behind a chilling signature that taunted both police and the public. The police launched a massive manhunt, but with no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no clear suspect, they struggled for leads. The investigation became a race against time as the body count continued to rise. The city's trust in law enforcement eroded as the murders continued. Citizens grew restless, demanding answers and protection, but the sense of helplessness only deepened. The Strangler was a phantom, slipping through the shadows, always one step ahead. Boston was desperate for answers, but the killer remained elusive. The fear seeped into daily life, changing the city forever. Boston would never be the same, its innocence lost to the shadow of the Strangler. The Strangler's victims were mothers, daughters, retirees, women from all walks of life. They were teachers, nurses, secretaries, and homemakers, each with their own stories, dreams, and routines. Some were well known in their neighborhoods, while others lived quietly, blending into the city's daily rhythm. The first, Anna Sleezers, was found in her home, strangled with her own bathrobe cord tied in a bow. Her death marked the beginning of a terrifying pattern that would grip Boston for months to come. The killer preyed on women living alone, exploiting their trust and vulnerability. He often gained entry by pretending to be a handyman or maintenance worker, using charm or deception to lower their guard. Crime scenes were disturbing. Victims posed in degrading positions, signaling a motive beyond murder, humiliation and dominance. The brutality was shocking, and the details were often withheld from the public to spare families further pain. The use of personal items like stockings or bathrobe cords added another layer of violation. Everyday objects became instruments of terror, turning the victim's own belongings against them. The bow-tied ligature became the killer's signature, a ritualistic flourish amid brutality. This chilling detail haunted investigators, who saw it as a taunt, a sign the killer was in control. 13 murders were officially linked to the Strangler, but the victims shared little in common beyond being women alone at home. Their ages ranged from teenagers to women in their 80s, and their backgrounds were as varied as the city itself. Each new murder sent shockwaves through Boston, deepening the city's terror. Newspapers blared headlines and rumors spread quickly, fueling a climate of fear and suspicion. Police struggled to find connections, making the killer seem even more elusive. The randomness of the attacks confounded investigators who worked around the clock but found few solid leads. The randomness and cruelty of the crimes left families and investigators haunted. Loved ones mourned in silence, and detectives carried the weight of unsolved cases. The Strangler was an indiscriminate predator, moving unseen through the city. His presence was felt everywhere, yet he remained a ghost, always one step ahead. His legacy was a trail of fear and unanswered questions, leaving Boston forever changed and its people searching for justice that seemed just out of reach. The Strangler's true signature was the bow, ritualistic, unnecessary for the crime, but essential to his identity. This detail linked otherwise disparate murders, suggesting a single killer at work. Investigators hoped the bow would reveal something about the Strangler's psychology, but it only deepened the mystery. The media fixated on the bow, turning it into a symbol of terror and confusion. Not all victims were found with a bow, fueling debate about whether one or multiple killers were responsible. The inconsistency of the knot and materials used complicated the investigation. The bow was both a clue and a curse, helping and hindering police efforts. It remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the case. The investigation was massive, hundreds of officers, thousands of interviews, but little progress. Forensics were primitive, DNA analysis didn't exist, and evidence was often contaminated or lost. The killer left almost nothing behind. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no clear pattern. Rivalries between police departments and lack of coordination hampered the search. A special Strangler bureau was eventually formed, but valuable time had been lost. Desperate, investigators even turned to psychics for help. The search became a frustrating, endless process, chasing a ghost through a maze of dead ends. Each new murder only deepened the sense of helplessness. The case shifted when Albert DeSalvo, already in custody for other crimes, confessed to being the Boston Strangler. He described the murders in detail, some of which hadn't been made public. Yet there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime scenes, no fingerprints, no DNA. Some details in his confession were wrong, raising doubts about his credibility. DeSalvo was never tried for the Strangler murders, only for unrelated assaults. His confession brought no closure. The case remained officially unsolved. DeSalvo was killed in prison, taking his secrets with him. The public was left with more questions than answers. The mystery of the Strangler's true identity endured. The theory of multiple killers has persisted, fueled by inconsistencies in the crimes. Victims fell into two groups: older women, often not sexually assaulted, and younger women attacked with greater violence. The signature knot varied, sometimes present, sometimes not, casting doubt on a single perpetrator. Some believe a copycat may have mimicked the original Strangler, explaining the changes in method. DeSalvo's confession, lacking physical evidence, did little to settle the debate. In 2013, DNA linked DeSalvo to the final victim, Mary Sullivan, but not to the others. This proved he was involved in at least one murder, but not necessarily all. The question of multiple killers remains unresolved. The case is still debated by experts and the public alike. The Strangler case transformed Boston, shattering its sense of safety and trust. People fortified their homes and suspicion of strangers became the norm. The case exposed flaws in law enforcement, prompting better cooperation and new investigative techniques. Crime scene preservation and criminal profiling advanced as a result. The Strangler's ritualistic bow became a case study in criminal psychology. The legacy of fear and fascination endures in books, films, and public memory. Boston's dark chapter forced hard lessons about safety and the nature of evil. The case remains a defining moment in the city's history. Its questions about justice and truth are still relevant today. The Boston Strangler story is a puzzle that still invites scrutiny. DNA evidence linked DeSalvo to one murder but left many questions unanswered. The debate over his guilt and the possibility of other killers continues. The case highlights the limits of past investigations and the evolution of forensic science. The Strangler's knot remains a haunting symbol, a clue that both revealed and obscured the truth. The search for answers goes on, reminding us that some mysteries are never fully solved.